KPIs only make sense when you measure them, and you need to measure them well.
And I'm not going to say this is the only thing that's contributed to this, but their churn is the lowest it's ever been.
So you can have the most perfect system in the world. You can work with us for 2 or 3 months to get those systems built. If the team doesn't use it, it doesn't matter. So how can you incentivize them to use it?
Welcome to the Ethical Scaling Podcast, your guide to navigating online business with integrity. Join Jay and Ben on this epic journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or new to the game, get ready for insights, strategies, and a dash of humor. So grab your favorite beverage, cozy up in your favorite spot, and get ready to deep dive into the art and science of ethical scaling. From client success to boosting lifetime value. Plus, learn how to turn clients into your best advocates. Ready to scale ethically? Let's dive in.
All right. Welcome back to Ethical Scaling Season 2. Today we're doing Episode 3. We're going to talk about quality control. What is it and why do you need it? As always, I'm joined by my prettier, smarter other half in the business.
Harrier.
Joao, what's up, my friend?
All good, all good. I was excited to basically talk about the subject we have for today. People are not very excited probably when they hear that the topic is going to be quality control. What is quality control and why do I need quality control? Well, let's talk about what it is. Quality control, as the name says, is your ability to control the quality of what you're doing. Could be a product, could be a service, whatever you do. But for us, because we focus on online service-based businesses, is like, what's your quality control? Do you have any quality control in place? And most companies, if they're big enough, if they have, as an example, like a bigger sales team or a bigger sales process, they have some kind of quality control going on for sales, which is good, amazing. Like, might not be as good as it could be, but I will leave that up for another discussion with sales experts. But Ben, I don't think I've ever seen quality control done for client success over the past almost 5 years. All the companies I've looked at, none of them had any quality control systems in place. And that has been one of the biggest transformations. And that's what we're going to discuss on our podcast today. It's like, what is so important? Why is it so important to have quality control in place? And I always love to use stories. And I was telling someone, I was on a call with one of our clients just before we started recording the podcast today. And I said that I don't see myself as being the most smart creator in the planet, but I'm really good at seeing what works and what doesn't. And I think that gives me a superpower, which is like, if this has been done before and this has been done well, can I just do what has been proven to work in an industry that is just underdeveloped, which is our industry, the online service-based businesses. So if you look back from the 70s, Toyota, basically, they were one of the first biggest companies in the world, paving the way for great quality control. Basically, they inspire a whole industry to change for the better. Even Ford, at that time, they flew to Japan to learn how Toyota production system worked, the TPS, to understand how they were doing quality control. So they wanted to learn and copy some of those systems that then inspire Motorola, Ford, a lot of big companies to follow what they're doing. So basically, their success becoming a leader in their industry was no accident. Basically, they were able to be committed to quality, efficiency, continuous improvement. Think about your business. Wouldn't it be better if your business was more efficient? You could see improvements over time. You knew that all your team members and all the systems you have in place were actually a commitment to quality. Why? Well, quality is going to be your stamp of approval to have a great reputation. If you don't have quality in what you deliver, do you think you're going to get a great word of mouth, great revenue generating activities, great referrals, great testimonials, great word of mouth, great online reviews? No, it's going to be much harder. Basically, using this quality control commitment, it's going to help create a quality-centric narrative around your business. One of the things that I love the most, and I'm going to be very biased, so bear with me for a second, is when clients tell us, man, this is one of the best client experience I've had being your client. I would love to do the same for our clients. Yes, my ego loves it. I'm sure your ego loves it too, Ben. But for me, it's like, man, if we eat our own dog food and our clients understand by going through what I call inception, what a great experience feels like, we're going to inspire them to do the same thing for their clients. And as soon as they understand how we do it, which is just by being very mindful and thoughtful of what we do and how we do it, they can just replicate that for the companies they work with, if it's a B2B, or the clients they work with, if it's a B2C model.
Yeah, well, and last time, yeah, and on many of these episodes, we talked about data, right, and tracking and things like that. And this is another huge piece in owners being able to make good decisions, right? And when we look at our own approach, right, like just the other day, I was saying, hey, here's a trend I keep seeing with clients, like they need this thing. Let me talk to Adam and see what he thinks about us weaving this into our process. Right now, that's a form of quality control because we're noticing a pattern that clients keep mentioning or something they're struggling with, where if we weren't digging in and looking at like what's happening on calls, what are we seeing in Slack messages, that's a form of quality control. And a lot of owners, they're like, they know something's missing, and they do this thing in sales, but they don't do it in client success, but they don't like, how do we do it? A lot of those things are what we're trying to address both, through our work and even here in these episodes.
And I think another problem with that is that because there is no system in place and we're already very much wired to negativity as humans, it's a survival instinct. Whenever they see that a specific team member didn't do something well, they're going to think, oh, this client success manager or account manager, oh man, this guy sucks because I'm getting this complaint. I got 2 complaints in the past 2 months. And then I look at the roster and they have 200 clients in the roster. So they actually got a 1% complaint from 200 clients. First of all, they're overworked, clearly. Number two is that it's not a big sample for us to judge if they're doing a great job or not. So it's important for you to have the numbers to understand, put things in perspective. If we were not wired to negativity, is this client success team member doing well or not? So I think we can move into the introduction, like the way we do it with our clients. And you guys feel like, hey, you guys are giving away the farm and you guys do everything on the podcast. Like, there is no secret. The things that I'm sharing with you guys that we do with our clients, the value we bring to the work we do with our clients is our ability to do it faster. Because with our experience with hundreds of reps, we know exactly what needs to be fixed and we know how to implement it much faster. But for people that are not ready to work with us, or they have no intention to work with us, but they trust our feedback and wisdom on everything related to client success and scaling businesses, which you guys just got to make sure you can implement these things right away. There are only 3 key layers you need to keep in mind for quality control. And you could apply this to any system or any department in your business. I'm going to double down on client success because that's what we do, but you can just focus on 3 layers: the quantitative layer, the qualitative layer, and the adherence layer. And we're going to go through them one by one so that you understand what I'm talking about. So let's start with number 1. And Ben, feel free to chime in at any point in time here. Let's think about quantitative. Those are normally called KPIs. My team has KPIs. Well, most of the client success teams, when they reach out to us, they have no KPIs at all. But imagine they have some KPIs, but then they're not measuring those KPIs. So KPIs only make sense when you measure them, and you need to measure them well. Like, one of the reasons we've spent so much time and money building a software was to actually allow people to have something that was created and tested, battle tested by us, to give them those KPIs. But why do you need those KPIs? What are you going to do with those KPIs? So first of all, you need KPIs and you need to measure so that you can create the right benchmarks. So you need to know for your business, as an example, for client success, what are your existing benchmarks for your business? And why do you need benchmarks? Well, you should be using those benchmarks to create your scorecards for your team members. So when you go and hire someone, you set a realistic expectation on what the KPIs should be, what the scorecard should be, and then we can review them often enough. Basically, if you don't have scorecards, you don't have a benchmark, you don't have KPIs, we need to remember that we'll need to monitor them to make sure we can accomplish one of the big goals we have, when building a client success team. So when we think about a client success team, our minimum is to create self-liquidating team members. That's the mindset we have. So at least each client success member should be able to generate enough revenue to cover their salary. Imagine if you pay someone 10K and they get an upsell of 10K a month, they already pay for their salary for that month. As an example, just using a very basic example, we talk about this multiple times in previous episodes. But second one, if you want to make the client success department a profit center, the only way for you to accomplish that is by monitoring the KPIs. So basically, I will go through the implementation and next steps at the end of the episode, but I just want to bear with me that you need the KPIs so that you can monitor their performance throughout the month and how close or how far they are from the expectations you've set with their job description and scorecards when you hired someone for your team.
Yeah, 100%. And we were talking just before the episode, about 6 months ago, I started doing this work with one of our clients, right? And their adherence, which you're going to talk about in a minute, was very high. Like they have strong systems, things like that, but no one was doing like real quality control, right? There was some real-time feedback from the owner if he joined a client call, that kind of thing. So I got in, started listening to calls, and the grades at the beginning were awful, right? And the practice advisors were like grateful to be getting that feedback. So that's another thing to keep in mind too, is your team wants feedback. They want to know, like, where can we improve? What can we do better? How can we make these calls with clients smoother? Those kinds of things. How can we serve clients at a higher level? And so, the early days of implementing this quality control system can be a little rough, right? It's like you start to see things that you're like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. And I can tell you with this client, in a matter of weeks, the calls were running better. Like they were implementing the feedback. And now it's like, they get, for the most part, perfect scores. Sometimes when there's an escalation, a client's unhappy, we have to talk through that, those kinds of things. But now it's like, it's smooth sailing. And then it's just more maintenance, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the qualitative part that is often not done, and I understand why, because we'll talk about the solution, the final solution, in a second. But basically, the qualitative part of quality control is that it requires time. You need to listen to calls, and you need to listen to the quality of the coaching your team members are giving to your clients. And you might tell me, I don't have a coaching program. I don't care. When your team member, your client success team member, is on a call with the client, they're coaching the client. 99% of the time, they're coaching the client. They're helping the client to understand what needs to get done for both sides. And Ben's example, you might be thinking, oh, that's a done with you offer. No, it's a done with you offer. It's a done for you offer. It's an agency. So we're talking about an agency where they do a lot of the things for clients, but there is never a solution out there that you're going to do 100% of the things for the client. That solution that doesn't exist unless your offer is just to run your business. That's 100% of control of the things. So a lot of times we need to coach clients on the qualitative side of things. And I think if people want to understand the second layer, the importance of QCing, which QCing is quality control on calls, or calls, and Ben mentioned Slack before. That's another form of coaching. If your clients do a lot of asynchronous communication through Slack, emails, whatever. Last episode, we talked about productizing and that the product alone is not enough to increase perceived value. Consumption and context can be more important to increase clients' perceived value than the product itself. The only way we can know if our team is providing the right context and consumption of the product or service we have available is by listening to those calls. It's by measuring if they're doing the right things on that call to make sure that the client feels seen and heard and primed to action. As an example, are we setting an agenda on that call? How is my energy on that call? Am I able to address the client archetype correctly? Because we talk about archetypes in another episode. If you guys want to watch that episode, just search Ethical Scaling Podcast Archetypes. You're going to find it. Are we able to summarize the call and basically reach to a final conclusion? Are we able to organize an action plan? And are we able to tell who's going to do what after the call? It sounds basic. I can tell you, if you go now and watch a bunch of your calls, most of them won't have this in place. It's not just the calls that Ben listened to. Like most companies we've worked with and most companies we haven't worked with, but I know their processes, this is not being done. Even as a client of other companies, they don't do that. So the importance and how this can make you stand out in the marketplace, it's absolutely crazy.
Mhm.
Which again, why is this not being done? Because you might tell me, hey, Jay, but I have SOPs, I have documents, I have internal policies. Amazing. Even clients that work with us, the first few weeks, first few months is just rebuilding all the systems and processes. There is no guarantee just because you have systems in process that adherence is going to be in place. So basically, that's the third layer and probably the most difficult
Yeah.
to implement is adherence. Like, is my team following the processes and systems I have created for them over time? So you can have the most perfect system in the world. You can work with us for 2 or 3 months to get those systems built. If the team doesn't use it, it doesn't matter. So how can you incentivize them to use it? Well, first should be part of their reviews. So when you look at their performance, most people just look at KPIs. KPIs are just the surface level. KPIs for most of these client success team members or client success leaders are going to be lag indicators, not lead indicators. Most of the lead indicators are going to be the quality of the coaching they provide to clients and how good they are at adhering to the systems we've built that have a track record that they work. So you will need feedback loops to remind your team that the systems have to be followed.
Yeah.
And following the Toyota style, if they're trying to follow a system and the system doesn't work, when I talk about Toyota, one of the things that was a breakthrough when a defect was found in the automobile industry, you would go through the whole assembly line and then you would analyze the car. And if the car was not good, you just have to fix it. They implemented the thing that anyone in the assembly line process could stop the whole production if they found something was defected. It was not working, was not good, was faulty. And that basically didn't allow the whole thing to build up to a level that will take you much more time to go back and rebuild the car from scratch just to fix it. So here's the same thing. If they're not adhering to the existing system, are you giving your client success team permission to stop the line if something is not working?
Yeah, and just real quick, because it's important to have a quality control process, right? And here's two other things, two other kind of side benefits that you might not think about when it comes to quality control. One is that it creates better relationships with your clients,
Mm-hmm.
right? What do I mean? Well, with that agency that I referenced before that I've been doing quality control for, that was something that I started to notice in the calls like, hey, we could do a better job just spending a few minutes strengthening the relationship with the client or asking them what's on their mind. Now, and I'm not going to say this is the only thing that's contributed to this, but their churn is the lowest it's ever been historically. They're sub 6% churn. And in a done for you agency, that's
Retainer model is not a
yeah,
contract, which already
yeah,
like more prone to churn because it's month to month.
super rare, right? So it's just such a massive lever to have
Mhm.
this system in place.
And I think, like, again, we've been trying to keep the podcast short and simple so you can go and, like, either think about what you're going to change or just go and implement any of those changes immediately. So I'm just going to make sure we can give you some next steps. First of all, you can create a manual process. I highly recommend doing quality control if you're going to implement something right away. Do it manually. There is no need for you to systemize a lot if you haven't done it yet. And if you're going to do it, like set up the system, make sure you have a way to pull the numbers, pull the KPIs, pull the call recordings, and look at system adherence. Ideally, if you have someone in your team that can be doing that, like an unbiased person, it could be a client concierge who pulls all the information and then the client success director does it. Or you have a smaller company, you want to do it yourself, fine. You're probably not going to love watching your own calls, but if you have to do it, do it. Like, I think we all have done that before in order for us to learn. And then how frequent should be the quality control process? Well, you should do it as often as possible, but I'm going to break down into weekly, monthly, and quarterly tasks. So weekly, my main goal would be to focus on the quality more than anything else. So weekly, you should be listening to calls. If you have a team, doesn't matter how big your team is, you should listen to at least one call per team member per week, ideally, so you can see how they're showing up, how's their energy, what's going on. And again, still on a weekly basis, look at adherence. Like, are they following the process? Is every single client, are all my clients getting some kind of contact, any kind of interaction, if that's my SOP internally? Are they doing the things they need to be doing? And then I can move to the next one. It's like, okay, cool. What about monthly? Well, monthly, it's where the KPIs are going to be the most relevant. So when I do the one-on-one performance reviews with every one of your team members, I should be looking at the quantity, so the KPIs. How was the churn? How was the referral rate? How was the retention rate? The upsell rate? How were all those things this month? And then I know if they did well or not from a KPI perspective. What about the quality? How were the calls that I reviewed? I reviewed 4 calls for this specific client success manager. How were those calls? Good, bad, so and so. What's the kind of feedback I can give them? What about adherence? They never send like end of week reviews. They never send the reports. They didn't follow the systems. They didn't follow anything that I asked them. They didn't track the clients like I asked them to track. There's going to be a 0 on adherence. I need to address that, because a month can go by with them doing that. I'm not going to let them do that for a second month. And then by doing that on that performance review, I can use those KPIs to set projections for the next month. And then I can review those KPIs and projections week by week. If we do all of these on a weekly and monthly basis, it will create a foundation for us quarterly to decide, is this team member the right team member for my team? And I might decide I need to hire another one like this, or I just need to fire this one and replace with a new one because this is not the right person. I've seen some people in our industry starting to use performance improvement plans. Basically, someone is not performing, they put them on a PIP, and if they don't perform, they're going to fire them. That's okay. But how am I going to put someone on a performance improvement plan without giving them feedback on the quality and on adherence and just based on numbers? Numbers alone just create a little bit of awareness that something is not going in the right direction, but it doesn't give people a tangible solution on what they should be working towards to. And you can do this manually, like I said. And again, if you're happy with what you heard so far, you can move to the next episode. You don't need to listen to what I'm going to say after. I'm not saying that I'm going to sell you our idea of the client success software, but our whole client success tracker software was built around quality control. It was built around your ability to know what your client success managers or account managers are doing. It was built around ways for you to reduce churn by making sure the KPIs are in place and we can measure those KPIs. We have a single source of truth. And we've built the Call AI, which is at the moment, I don't know when you're going to listen to this episode. Maybe it's not free anymore. It will be a paid version in the future. You have Call AI that you can just get calls to be uploaded. And the Call AI is going to grade those calls based on specific parts of the call, including giving sentiment on the call for both your client success manager energy and your client's energy to give you enough information for us to know I can still listen to calls. I still need to listen to calls. This is not going to replace humans, but instead of me listening to 4 calls a month for a CSM, the CSM does 4 calls a day. I can actually process, 100 calls a month for that CSM, listen to 4 to get a better sample of me doing it myself, but then I can look at what AI is telling me and what trends are happening for that client success manager. So no, wait. I'm seeing Jay is getting a lot of reds. I listened to 4 calls and they weren't great. I need to address this with Jay because something is going on. If I don't address it right now, I'm going to churn all my clients. And why is this relevant? Well, that's what we're going to leave for the next episode. So basically, you need to have quality control in place. You need to have all these things in place. Ideally, a software like ours in place, because if you don't have that, you won't be able to follow the 3-step process to scale an online business. But that's going to be episode 4. I will need to save that spoiler for next time.
Sweet. All right, guys. So listen to this many times and then put some kind of quality control process in place. Next time, we're going to talk about the 3-step process to scale an online business. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ethical Scaling Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights and laughter. If you enjoyed today's show, spread the love, leave us a review, and share this podcast with fellow business enthusiasts. And let's create a ripple effect of ethical growth together. Until next time, keep scaling ethically, dreaming big, and finding joy in the journey. Now, Jay and Ben are signing off. Cheers.